During the regular season of Backyard Farmer, we get a lot of questions about growing fruit trees in Nebraska. It's my pleasure today to be able to have Vaughn Hammond with us. Vaughn is a former extension educator with the University of Nebraska Extension, but he now has a great new position, and he is Orchard Operations and Education Team Leader for Kimmel Orchard and Vineyard down in Nebraska City. Vaughn, absolutely great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Kim. Appreciate it.
So I'm going to ask you a handful of questions here that I know our viewing audience is going to want to hear the answers to. People want to grow good fruit crops the following season. What do we have them do during the winter months in Nebraska?
Well, first and foremost, this time of year, it's pruning. It's very important that you're pruning when the trees are completely dormant. And so when the trees are dormant, that means all the carbohydrates and all the essence within the plant has transferred to where they need to overwinter, like to the roots or to the buds or wherever it may be. So when you're pruning when it's dormant, it allows the plant to take that pruning without damage, and then it concentrates those carbohydrates in the areas that are important. So when you're pruning this time of year, I would say 95% of the folks out there pruning do not take enough wood. The old orchardist adage was if you could take a bushel basket and throw it at your apple tree and it landed on the other side of the apple tree without touching a branch, you'd prune properly. That's changed a little bit now. They say throw your hat. But it's still the same basic principle, is you're removing the excess wood to create more fruiting wood.
Alrighty, so a lot of people like to grow apples, which seems to be a fairly easy crop, but tons and tons of questions about peaches and maybe even apricots last year. Are there specific things we want to talk about to make sure that those will produce fruit?
You know, peaches and apricots are very popular as far as the home gardener goes. Who doesn't love a delicious peach or apricot? The problem with peaches and apricots are they tend to be very early blooming, which then gives them the opportunity of having those late frosts situations where those flower buds are frozen off. Case in point, this year, we're probably going to be in the 50s in February. That's about the temperatures when a peach tree and an apricot tree are starting to wake up, and those buds will start to swell. And if we have any prolonged period of time in February and March of warmer temperatures, those trees are really going to want to bloom way earlier than they should. And so this is the problem, getting a nice crop off a peach or an apricot on a consistent basis. This year we've had some terribly, terribly cold weather. At one point in time we were as cold in Nebraska as the Antarctic was. So once you start to hit like 10 degrees below zero, it really starts to affect the peach buds and the apricot flower buds for that matter. And so as we crept down to 19 degrees in parts of the state where even 20, 21, 22 degrees below zero, that's getting pretty cold. I'm not saying that we won't have a peach crop, but terribly cold weather does have an effect on peach blossoms.
In front of you, you have a rather odd looking device, and what is this thing, and what in the world does it have to do with doing anything for good fruit production?
Well, actually, this is a very important tool for us in the orchard. Believe it or not, it's a coddling moth trap, and this is a very interesting piece of or tool in the orchard, in that this helps us reduce pesticide use in the orchard. By using this little trap, we could become much more environmentally friendly. So this little button here is infused with the female sex pheromone of the coddling moth, and you place this in the trap, and this pheromone attracts the males. You put this trap about 6 to 7 foot tall in the tree when the apple blossoms start to show pink, okay? And at that point in time, science gets involved. You start counting growing degree days. And if you have a heavy coddling moth problem, you're shooting for about 180 to 200 growing degree days. So once you catch the first adult male in this trap, you start counting the growing degree days, and when you get to 200, that's when you spray. In the past, folks just started spraying. Come May 1st, they just sprayed every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. This allows us to reduce our spray inputs into the orchard, thus reducing impacts, environmental impacts on beneficial insects and other non-target insects out there, or organisms, and not just necessarily insects. And so as this continues, if the coddling moth problem is extremely heavy, then at 1250 degree growing days or so is when the second hatch takes place. So you continue to monitor this, and then you spray again.
Vaughn, thanks a million for coming all the way up from Nebraska City and sharing all that great information with us today.
It was absolutely my pleasure. I always enjoy it.